Committee and the Committee of Privileges.
Presentation of report from committee.
I recognize the Vice President on behalf of the Chairman of the Standing Orders Committee.
I rise to lay on the table report number 3/1/14, report from the Standing Orders Committee on the amendment of Standing Orders of the Senate Motion 2021.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table.
Public business, government business, motion.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, with your permission not to repeat the recitals, I move. Now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House approves the amendment to the standing orders proposed in the draft statutory instrument annexed hereto, which is tabled as sessional paper number 2/1/14, and the standing orders of the Senate shall be and are hereby amended accordingly.
Honorable members, the question is now, therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House approves the amendment to the standing orders proposed in the draft statutory instrument annexed hereto, which is tabled as sessional paper number 2/1/14, and the standing orders of the Senate shall be and are hereby amended accordingly. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bills for second reading.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, I rise to move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Central Bank of Belize Act Chapter 262 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for emergency programs and facilities in unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systemic circumstances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, by way of an extremely short introduction to this bill, I would simply remind colleagues that the bill seeks to address two issues. One, to allow the central bank to make larger advances to the government of Belize based on the unusual economic performance of government revenue during the past year, and the fact that the provision has not been obeyed, I should say, or complied with in the main. The second objective is to provide power to the central bank to introduce emergency programs or facilities in unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systemic circumstances. Madam President, I do not believe that anyone needs to be convinced that Belize, like the rest of the world, has experienced and is experiencing very unusual, very unique, and very unusual exigent economic and financial circumstances. The bill provides some power that has been deemed necessary after discussion with the central banks and consultation with the banking industry. The bill, Madam President, is very short. It provides that the programs would be for limited duration as prescribed by the board and with the permission of the Minister of Finance. Subclause 67(6) is of particular importance in that it is designed not to assist any specific business or entity. Finally, Madam President, Clause 68 provides for the board to make regulations to establish the policies and procedures to govern emergency programs and facilities established by Section 67.
I think it's clear and not so clear at the same time what the the government is trying to do. If you look at section 68, the proposed section 68, as read by the leader of government business just a while ago, it says policies and procedures will be developed to ensure security for the program, the facility and the purpose and all of that, which means that there is some level of fleshing out that has to take place. We're not getting at this point, the details of how it will work. And I think, Madam President, that needs to come fast and furious. Yesterday would be too late, because then the financial community needs to appreciate exactly how this program will run and needs to be confident that the central bank will not give any preferential treatment to anybody. Madam President, there's a concept in law that says that justice must not only be done, but also seem to be done. I think that concept can clearly be borrowed by the financial system in terms of the role of the central bank. They must not just be independent, but they must also seem to be independent. Because what you're asking the central bank to do now in this bill is to take an active role in the economy. And if they take an active role in the economy, exactly what is that role? And you're talking about different institutions, companies who are a part of a program. Well, how are you affected by the central bank if you choose not to belong to that program, for example? And what if I'm a part of that program and the central bank facilitates one of the companies with foreign exchange that one of those outside of the program doesn't have access to? Then how does that person who has been left out has any confidence that the central bank would not be showing any preferential treatment over one another? Let me give you an example. Company A decides they want to be a part of this program. But Company B says, I don't want to be a part of that program. Then all of a sudden, Company A starts to get everything facilitated to it by the central bank, because they're a part of that program. How do we thread that needle to convince Company B that you have to be beholden to the central bank for your business to thrive? How do you explain to them that you're not choosing this business over that business? And this is where it can become very critical, Madam President. If you look at section 67(5), the board shall not establish any emergency program or facility under this section without the prior approval of the minister. I thought, Madam President, that this government was going in a direction of the minimalization of ministerial interference and positioning. Why would you bring the Minister of Finance into something like this, a program that is going to be run and operated by the central bank, when we have gone through pains to explain to everybody who would hear that the central bank is a separate legal entity from the executive and the government? No, you have the Minister of Finance approving, having to approve programs for different companies that is going to be invested into or dealt with by the central bank. How do you convince a person that there is no political interference there? How do you convince an entity And it may not be the case, you know, Madam President. There may be no politics involved. But from the minute you need the approval of the minister, automatically people will say that politics is involved. And that is why it's a very, very risky move to have the central bank, the referee of the economy, to step into the arena and start to play. So I hope, Madam President, that the government knows what it's doing. Because I heard the leader of government business also say that Belize is not the only country in the world that's suffering like this. Man, it's been this way from last March. And the PUP said that if they were to be elected to government, they would take so many steps to grow the economy. Is this growing the economy? This is not growing the economy. This is not the attraction of any foreign direct investment or anything like that. This is the financial referee of the country, essentially bailing out different companies and corporations who are not doing good in this economy. That will be the perception of this. This says, in unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systematic circumstances, the bank may, through banks, financial institutions, statutory corporations, or other similar bodies, establish emergency programs or facilities with limited or broad-based eligibility. That is too broad, man. How do you qualify for this program? What are required of you to say, yes, you deserve some help from the central bank? What if you were just running a company in a slack way and you're now using the central bank to be bailed out? There's major issues in the US financial system, Madam President, where these companies are just bailed out by the federal government, just bailed out. So then you're not encouraged to perform, you're not encouraged to do well because you can be bailed out. How do we convince the Belizean people that this is not a law that is designed to bail out failing companies? Companies that would have failed regardless of the pandemic. This gives the central bank the authority to oversee the purchase of financial assets, including debt or equity instruments or other securities from any participant in any program or facility. So then, if a company owes money, the central bank can essentially purchase their debt. So if you have a company and you say that your company is in trouble, you participate in this program, the Minister of Finance says, yes, I approve this person in the program. That person can then get help from the government directly to their business. Now, what is a business to say who was not approved, but then another business was approved? So government, they pump money in a one company because that was approved by the minister, but the minister did not approve the pumping of government money into another company. That is what, because you can't pump money in everybody, Madam President. So some people will have to be told no. How do you convince those people that that no is an objective no and not because of some political affiliation? How do you convince the person of that when the act is telling you plain that the Minister of Finance must approve what the board wants to do? This is a risky and dangerous game, Madam President. It reminds me of when the government at the time, the PUP government of the time, decided to play dice on the derivative market, and we lost like $10 million in about 15 minutes. You better know what you are doing. You are going to grant credit facilities to any participant. How do you qualify to become a participant? What makes you eligible? Discounting of notes, bills of exchange, securities. how do we know that people will not be getting help from the central bank based on political motivation? Madam President, if you look at section 34, this is just essentially the government wants to pass a law to make it official that the central bank will essentially be printing money to give to these businesses, to give to the government. So, government short of money, we just advance you one money. That has a heavy and serious effect on inflation when you flood the market with more money than there is out there that the market can sustain. I guess Senator Cowie could further educate me on that. But that's the first and basic response of any market when there's a flood of money that is not being generated from within the economy itself. And then when you establish a program, how long is that program going to last? Is that what will probably be fleshed out in the policies and procedures? How long a program lasts? 6 months? 1 year? The term of the government? How long? Because then once you get into that, then you have to have a cutoff time. You have to have a limit as to how long and how deep you will help certain people come out of their financial problems. And then how do you monitor these businesses to make sure that their finance issues are as a result of the emergency situation we find ourselves in? How do we know that that business is failing because the person is a bad business person? How do you know that? How do you make that differentiation? Who monitors? Who assesses the program? Who looks after the program? Is there a body set up to do that once you've given these people fresh money from the central bank? These are all the questions that we have, Madam President. And to say in a bill that pass this and we will flesh out procedures, in my view, creates uncertainty, Madam President, and is unsafe for a financial market that is already fragile. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Zlani Salas.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Some brief comments. Very much a question and a couple of concerns that I want to put forward. From our side, obviously, we support the need for such an amendment, especially that we're in the throes of this major financial crisis. But even so, right, there are a couple of things I would like to point out, with your permission, Madam President. Section 34 of the Principal Act is repealed and replaced with the following. With a view to offsetting fluctuations between receipts and payments of the government, the bank may make direct advances to the government, provided that at any one time the total outstanding amount of such direct advances shall not exceed 12% of the current revenues of the government collected during the preceding financial year. There was an entire section from the current section 34 that was left out. We received an explanation from the Financial Secretary why that was left out, but I think it is important for the public to understand why that was left out, and I'll read the section that was left out. Any such advances outstanding at the end of a financial year shall be repaid not later than 3 months after the end of that financial year. And if any such advances are not so repaid, the power of the bank to make further direct advances to the government may not be exercised until the outstanding advances have been repaid. So I just, put that out there, hoping that my colleagues from the government can explain why that was left out. I think it's important information that should be shared. looking at a couple other sections, I think my main concern with this amendment is that even though we have heard leader of government business say that it is for a temporary period, the way this amendment is laid out, it leaves it open-ended. I think my colleague before me referred to that. It leaves it open-ended. I think what would have been good to have here is something similar to what was done when the Crime Control and Criminal Justice Amendment Act was passed. And this is a good opportunity, with your permission, Madam President, to remind the government that when that act was passed in March 2018, written into that was that 3 years later, government would do a comprehensive review of that act to see if in fact all the provisions or certain provisions were still relevant or needed. Something similar to that, I think, should have been put into this amendment so that after, for argument's sake, 12 months, government will do a review to see if that the provisions under this amendment should be discontinued or continued. And one final sort of concern I would like to mention. Right, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just needed to look at the wording in the Crime Control and Criminal Justice Amendment Act, where it was written into it that after such a period there would be a comprehensive review of the act, and it was written into it that it would be after 3 years. So just to reiterate, I think we needed to do something, similar in this amendment here. Now, I'll end by sort of putting a concern forward, hoping to see clarification, that we understand that in times of crisis, the state has an obligation to provide emergency liquidity support to financial institutions and to take necessary measures to ensure that the wheels of the economy are primed. However, we need to make sure that the taxpayer of the country do not shoulder the cost. We need to make sure that this is nothing more than public liquidity for private capital swap. We need to make sure that the bank and the shareholders bear the cost of any such programs, and that these should not be shouldered or passed on to the public. That is another of our primary concerns that I would like to put forward. So I look forward to receiving clarification and a guarantee from the government side that these concerns can be addressed. Right. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to raise a few comments as shared by the NTUCB with me, and I'm sure I've shared these before in committee meetings, but I must put on record the concerns that they have. And so when we met, Madam President, I referred to 67.1 that speaks to the unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systemic circumstances. And I shared the NTUCB's concern that this is a bit too broad. And they believe that there needs to be some criteria to define what that would look like, what that would be. And while we understand that we cannot prepare, or we cannot, or it will be difficult to identify all of those instances, that if we have some sort of a criteria or definition to that, it would help in being able to identify those. What we don't want to happen, Madam President, is that mischief can be created because it is not clear and we give too much of a space. It is too broad that persons can do what they believe they are able to do when something is too broad. And so I raised that concern before, and despite getting a response, we still feel that it's too broad and should be defined. I also raised the concern in terms of 68, where we looked at the financial institutions, and we got that the domestic banks have reported as of December, as we said, 424.2 million in liquidity, and the credit unions 247.1 million in liquidity. And so for that reason then we felt that maybe 68 2A would not be necessary at this time. We also thought that there needs to be, some kind of policies in place to encourage the use of excess liquidity by these institutions. Also, Madam President, the matter of the ministerial discretion. This has been something that for quite some time as unions we have raised, because we believe that when we give this sort of a discretion, again, it can create issues, and that might not be the intent, but it can happen, it has happened, we've seen it, and that is what we don't want to continue happening. We want to ensure that our ministers, yes, we know that they have a duty to perform, but we don't want to give them that broad leeway where, it's dependent on them and what they say. So those are just a few of the concerns that that we had in terms of going through this bill. And I know, as I said before, I know that some of these comments that we made were responded to, but we thought that they were not satisfactory enough, that we had to raise those concerns again. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Morning, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to make a few remarks on the Central Bank of Belize Amendment Bill 2021. There are two main objectives, Madam President, as the previous speakers had mentioned. One is to address the liquidity situation at the central bank, with the central government. And the other is to address the liquidity situation that may arise in the private sector in cases where unforeseen economic circumstances may come about. For example, we're in the throes of the COVID situation right now, and so the private sector, the central government, are facing significant constraints with respect to liquidity. And so we understand the concept on where government is going. And generally we support the move simply because we think it's needed. But, and as well, Madam President, in other jurisdictions, similar things have been done to address the situation. We saw it in the US earlier. However, in going down this road, we should bear in mind the following: that the liquidity that we are addressing is managed for inflationary effects. This is especially so in the context of the need to maintain the fixed exchange peg. We don't want the situation to deteriorate where it's hurting the peg, where we have too much liquidity in the system, or where it starts having an inflationary effect. And so I think that aspect of it needs to be managed. And so I urge those who are overseeing the process that be looked in very closely and that it be managed very well. The Minister of Finance and the central government will oversee and manage this process, Madam President. And this is necessary that it is run properly. However, I hasten to add, is that given that the government has a significant control over the board of the central bank in terms of the appointments, with respect to the governor as well as the board, and that the Minister of Finance as well has a tremendous influence in terms of how this program will be run, that perhaps an additional oversight should be added to the process, perhaps including the social partners. Again, we're talking about public finances, we're talking about things that we've seen, like Senator Smith mentioned earlier. You know, we've seen things gone wrong, even though they were not intended to at the beginning of the process. So I think some oversight mechanism would be very good to help manage and ensure that the intended benefits that we intend to that the bill intends are secured, and that it doesn't go down a path that we would not like or we don't foresee at this point. Another possible amendment, Madam Speaker, would be is on the issue of transparency, that any transactions that happens under these programs, that they be published, and so the public has the ability to review them, to examine them, to see why they were addressed. I think Senator Perifit spoke to some of this a little earlier, and I think he has a good point that we want to ensure that the companies that benefit under this program benefits because there's a specific criteria under which they benefit, and it's not that, you know, for reasons other than, you know, the economic circumstances that may have come about because of the unexpected downturn that may have come about. With respect to the increase of the 12%, Madam Speaker, there should be a clause perhaps in the bill that takes back the overdraft to 8.5% when the economic receipts of the country return to what it was before the unexpected situation may have arisen. I think we spoke about that briefly in a virtual meeting. I raised that point, but again, I'd like to bring it up here again so that you know, we could take note of it again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I want to thank the senators for their contributions to the debate. There are a few points I wish to respond to. The first being, Madam President, the whole purpose of this piece of legislation is to meet the urgent and exigent circumstances that we face as a country. And I didn't hear anyone disagree that we are facing those circumstances. So we start looking at the bill from a common position. The second point I wish to make, Madam President, is the following. The need for the amendment to Section 34, touched on by Senator Herrera just now and other speakers, is that government revenue has fallen and therefore the percentage has increased. He makes the point, and others have as well, that perhaps the percentage should come down when government finances are restored to previous levels. That may well be so, Madam President. There will come a time when the government of the day, the central bank of the day, will be able to take a look and advise the government whether it is now time to return to the 8%. So, in the words of the Right Honorable George Price, we shouldn't make the perfect the enemy of the good. We need this now. I want to focus just very briefly on Clause 67. First of all, Madam President, we have to read the entire thing in context. Secondly, we have to operate on a basis of some level of good faith, some level of maturity. And as I was listening to my colleagues, I was wondering to myself whether I could bring to mind any scandal that I have heard from the central bank itself. Why are we assuming that unless everything is in black and white and is put down on a piece of paper, there is going to be mischief, there is going to be mismanagement, there is going to be abuse by the central bank? I couldn't recall any particular scandal by way of the central bank as I was sitting here listening. But, Madam President, it is worthwhile looking at what the intention is, because misconceptions could be left here. And the easiest one I want to address is the criticism by Senator Perifit of the failure to elaborate the regulations that are set out or are proposed by Clause 68. He knows, I know, everybody in here knows that regulations are not set out in a bill. So to come here and say that the regulations should be set out in the bill is pure mischief. The fact of the matter is, Madam President, the regulations must be promulgated by the central bank prior to the commencement of this, these programs. So we will all see, and the promulgation means they have to be made public. We will all see what are the regulations and establish the policies and procedure to govern the emergency programs and facilities. All of that will be made public prior to the commencement of the programs. Taking a very quick look at Clause 68.2, it is designed to ensure that any emergency program is for the purpose of providing liquidity to the financial system. What's the key word there? To the system, not to aid a failing financial company. What you have is money sitting in banks doing nothing. Sitting in banks. Senator Smith said 424 million in domestic banks, 247 million in credit unions. Madam President, tens of thousands of Belizeans are unemployed, thousands of businesses have failed, thousands more are on the edge, and we say that we are currently facing an urgent, unique, unusual, exigent financial and economic circumstances, and we have to have instruments designed by the central bank, promulgated and made public so that access can be had to some of those funds in managed and regulated ways in order to stimulate the economy, to create jobs, and to get Belize bounce back better. That's what this is designed for. Look at what the procedures say. Ensure that the security for any emergency program is sufficient to protect taxpayers from losses. That is what it says. Ensure that any program or facility is terminated in a timely and orderly fashion. So, Madam President, not as was suggested, this is not consul levy. This is not our feeding trough. It is a program that is going to be structured, that is going to be limited in time, that is going to be orderly wound down, that it is going to deal with emergencies and protect taxpayers from losses and prohibit borrowing by borrowers that are insolvent. I believe, Madam President, I am hoping, Madam President, that if we look at this soberly, if we recognize the extraordinary circumstances in which this country finds itself, through COVID, drought, floods, and mismanagement by the previous administration, it is absolutely critical that we give to the central bank the power to design and propose policies and measures that can get the economy moving. Madam President, we have secured the first amount of vaccines. More are coming. We have to move to start opening the economy to restore confidence, to restore growth, to create jobs. This bill, this amendment is designed to make Belize bounce back better, and I ask my colleagues to support it. And Madam President, I ask that the question be put. Thank you, Madam President.
May I ask for a division in the matter?
Clerk?
There will be a division on the Central Bank of Belize Amendment Bill. Senator Eamon Courtney? Yes. Senator Colette Montejo? Yes. Senator Isabel Bennett?
Yes.
Senator Christopher Koyi?
Yes.
Senator Erica Jang?
Yes.
Senator Bevington Cowell?
Yes.
Senator Michael Perifit? No. Senator Aldo Salazar? No. Senator Sheena Pitts? No. Senator Kevin Herrera?
Yes.
Senator Bishop Alvin Bengushe?
Yes.
Senator Elena Smith?
Abstain.
I didn't hear you.
I said abstain.
Abstain. Okay. Senator Osmani Salas? That was a yes.
Yes.
For the Central Bank of Belize Amendment Bill 2021, there were 9 yes, 3 noes, and 1 abstain. Therefore, the yes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Central Bank of Belize Act, Chapter 262 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for emergency program and facilities in unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systematic circumstances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, as signaled on Friday afternoon, I seek the indulgence of the Senate to defer the second reading of the Public Contracts Commission Bill 2021.
Honorable members, the question is that the second reading of the Public Contracts Commission Bill 2021 be deferred. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Committee of the Whole Senate on Bill.
Honorable members, And those in the gallery, please leave.
Reporting and third reading of bill.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Central Bank of Belize Amendment Bill 2021 and passed it without amendment. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Central Bank of Belize Act, Chapter 262 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for emergency programs and facilities in unusual and exigent economic, financial, or systemic circumstances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Central Bank of Belize Act, Chapter 262 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to provide for emergency programs and facilities in unusual and exigent economic, financial, and systematic circumstances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the leader of government business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The Senate now stands adjourned.